I stood at the edge of our living room, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and regret. My hands trembled, clutching the envelope I'd driven back to retrieve me husband's will, forgotten in the chaos of grief. It was supposed to be a simple trip to the lawyer's office, a formality to tie up the loose ends of David's life. He'd been gone 3 months, and I thought the worst of my pain was over. I was wrong. The house felt different when I stepped inside, quieter than it should have been, the kind of quiet that hums with secrets. I heard voice slow, sharp, slicing through the stillness. My daughter, Emily, and her husband, Nathan, were in the kitchen. Their words weren't meant for me, but they found me anyway. We can't let her find out, Emily hissed, her voice tight with something I didn't recognize. If she reads it, we're done. Nathan's reply was colder, calculated. Then we make sure she doesn't. Whatever it takes. My heart stuttered. The envelope grew heavy in my hands, as if it held more than paper, more than David's last wishes. It held something they feared, something they were willing to destroy. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow, afraid they'd hear the betrayal pounding in my chest. Emily, my only child, the girl I'd raised through skinned knees and sleepless nights, was plotting against me. And Nathan, charming, polished Nathan, who'd swept into our lives 5 years ago with promises of love and stability, was her accomplice. I wanted to storm in, to demand answers, but my feet wouldn't move. Fear rooted me. Fear of what I'd learn. Fear of what I'd already lost. David's death had been sudden. A heart attack at 52. Too young. Too unfair. I'd been drowning in grief, leaning on Emily and Nathan to keep me afloat. Now, their voices painted a different picture. One where I was the obstacle. Not the mother. Not the widow. The will. It had to be the will. I'd never read it, trusting the lawyer to handle the details. David had always been private about money, and I'd let him be. But now, I needed to know. I slipped into the study, my hands shaking as I tore open the envelope. The words blurred at first, my eyes stinging with tears I hadn't realized were falling. David's handwriting, neat and deliberate, filled the margins of the legal document. A letter to me tucked inside. Clara, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry for the secrets I kept. My throat tightened. Secrets. David had been my anchor, my partner through 30 years of marriage. We built a life together, raised Emily, weathered every storm. What secrets could he have? The will outlined the usual savings. The house. A trust for Emily, but then I saw it. A clause, buried in legal jargon, leaving a significant portion of his estate to a name I didn't recognize, Sarah Mitchell. $500,000. My mind reeled. Who was Sarah Mitchell? Why would David leave her anything, let alone a fortune? And why were Emily and Nathan so desperate to keep me from this? I heard footsteps. Too close. Too fast. I shoved the will back into the envelope and tucked it under a stack of books just as Emily appeared in the doorway. Her eyes, so like David's, narrowed slightly, searching my face. Mom, you're back early, she said, her voice too bright, too careful. I forgot something. I managed. My own voice a stranger's. Nathan loomed behind her, his smile practiced, his gaze cold. Everything okay, Clara? He asked, and I hated how my name sounded in his mouth. Like a weapon. I nodded, my heart racing. and made an excuse about needing to rest. They didn't follow me upstairs, but I felt their eyes on me, heavy with intent. In my bedroom, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of their words pressing against me. They were plotting something tied to the will, to Sarah Mitchell, to secrets David had kept even from me. I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to protect myself. From my own daughter. From the man she'd married. The next morning, I woke with a plan, though it felt more like survival than strategy. I'd play along, act oblivious, while I dug into the truth. Emily and Nathan were already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Their laughter too loud, too forced. "Morning, Mom," Emily said, pouring me coffee. Her smile was perfect, but I saw the cracks now the way her eyes flicked to Nathan, the way his hand lingered on her arm. I sipped the coffee, my stomach churning, and made small talk about the weather, the lawyer's appointment, anything to keep them from suspecting I'd heard them. After breakfast, I drove to the library, the one place I could think without their eyes on me. I used the public computer to search for Sarah Mitchell, my fingers clumsy on the keys. The results were overwhelming. Too many Sarah Mitchells, none of them clearly tied to David. But one article caught my eye. A small obituary from 10 years ago. Sarah Mitchell, age 32, survived by her daughter, Lily. No mention of a husband. No mention of David. But the timing gnawed at me. Emily had been 20 then. In college. Distant. Had David been hiding something even then? I printed the article and tucked it into my purse, my mind racing. Was Lily David's daughter? Was that why he'd left money to Sarah? The thought made me sick. But it fit the secrecy, the money, the way Emily and Nathan were circling me like vultures. If Emily knew about a half-sister, if Nathan saw a threat to their inheritance, they might do anything to keep it quiet. I drove home, my hands tied on the wheel, my heart torn between grief and rage. David had betrayed me, but Emily's betrayal cut deeper. She was my blood, my heart, and now she was conspiring against me. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof. Something to hold over them. Something to make them confess. The house was quiet when I returned. Emily and Nathan gone for the day. I searched their room, guilt warring with necessity. In Nathan's nightstand, I found a burner phone, its call log filled with a single number. I dialed it, my pulse pounding, and a woman's voice answered, soft and hesitant. "Hello," she said. "Who is this?" I hung up, my hands shaking. It was her. Sarah. Or someone connected to her. That night, I barely slept. The burner phone's existence burning a hole in my thoughts. I didn't tell Emily or Nathan what I'd found, but I watched them closer, noting every glance, every whisper. Emily was different now. Her warmth a mask, her laughter a performance. Nathan was worse. His charm had always been too smooth. But now it felt predatory, like he was waiting for me to slip. I started keeping the will with me, hidden in my purse, afraid they'd destroy it if they found it. I called the lawyer, scheduling a private meeting to discuss the clause about Sarah Mitchell. He was cagey, saying only that David had been adamant about the provision, refusing to explain why. He said you'd understand in time. The lawyer told me, his voice heavy with pity. Understand. I didn't understand anything, except that my family was unraveling, and I was the only one fighting to hold it together. Days passed. each one heavier than the last. I tracked down the number from the burner phone, using a reverse lookup service at the library. It belonged to a woman named Lily Mitchell, living an hour away. My stomach dropped. Lily. Sarah's daughter. David's daughter. I had to meet her, to see her face, to know if she carried his eyes, his smile. But I couldn't just show up not without risking Emily and Nathan finding out. They were watching me too. Their questions about my day too pointed. Their concern too rehearsed. I started locking my bedroom door at night, afraid of what they might do if they thought I was getting too close to the truth. The will. Sarah. Lily, it was all connected. And I was caught in the middle. A widow fighting for justice in a house full of lies. I decided to confront Lily, but carefully. I left a note in Emily's room, vague enough to seem innocent, visiting an old friend tomorrow. If they were tracking me, they'd think nothing of it. The next morning, I drove to Lily's address, a small apartment in a quiet town. My heart pounded as I knocked, unsure what I'd say, what I'd find. The door opened, and there she was, a young woman, mid-20s, with dark hair and eyes that stopped me cold. David's eyes. She looked at me, confused, and I stammered. I'm Clara, David's wife. Her face changed, a flicker of recognition, then fear. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, but she let me in. And then she told me everything, how David had been her father, how he'd supported her and her mother in secret, how he'd promised to tell me one day but never did. Emily knew, Lily said. Emily had known for years. And Nathan? Nathan had a plan to make sure I never found out. A plan that would leave me with nothing. Lily's apartment was small, cluttered with books and photographs. A life built on modest means, but rich in warmth. She sat across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. Those eyes so much like David's searching mind for judgment. I wanted to hate her, to hate the proof of my husband's betrayal. But I couldn't. She was as much a victim of his secrets as I was. He loved you, she said softly, her voice breaking. He told me about you. How strong you were. How he didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me. He'd torn my world apart. And now Emily and Nathan were finishing the job. I asked Lily about the will. About the money left to her mother, Sarah, who died years ago. Lily's eyes darkened. Emily found out about me when we were teenagers, she said. She was furious. Said I was stealing her inheritance. I didn't even know about the will until Nathan contacted me last month. Nathan. His name sent a chill through me. What did he want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lily hesitated, then said, he offered me money to disappear. Said if I didn't, he'd make sure I regretted it. I drove home in a daze, Lily's words echoing in my head. Nathan wasn't just protecting Emily's inheritance, he was orchestrating something darker. Something that threatened not just me, but Lily too. My daughter, my Emily, was complicit. And that truth cut deeper than David's infidelity. When I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed like a stranger. Its windows dark. Its silence menacing. Emily and Nathan were inside, their voices drifting from the living room as I slipped in quietly. She's been acting strange, Emily was saying, her tone sharp. What if she knows? Nathan's reply was low, steady. Then we deal with it. We've come too far to stop now. My blood ran cold. Deal with it. What did that mean? I clutched my purse. The will still inside. and tiptoed to the study. I needed a plan. A way to protect myself and Lily. A way to confront them without losing everything. I spent the night poring over the will, searching for clues, for anything that could give me leverage. David's letter to me, tucked inside, was both a confession and a plea. Clara, I never stopped loving you, he wrote. Sarah was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but Lily is my daughter. I wanted to provide for her, to make things right. Forgive me. Forgive him. I wasn't sure I could, but I understood now why Emily and Nathan were so desperate. The money for Lily wasn't just a number, it was a truth they wanted buried. A truth that could shatter their carefully crafted lives. I hid the will in a locked drawer, then called Lily, warning her to be careful. Don't trust Nathan, I told her. And don't tell anyone we've met. She agreed, her voice trembling, and I hung up feeling more alone than ever. My family was a house of cards, and I was about to pull the first one. The next day, I played my part, cooking breakfast, smiling through the tension, asking Emily about her plans with Nathan. She was guarded, her answers short, but Nathan was smoother, his charm a polished blade. You seem stressed, Clara, he said, his eyes locked on mine. Anything we can help with? I forced a laugh, shaking my head. But inside, I was screaming. I needed evidence. Something concrete to expose their plot. I remembered the burner phone in Nathan's nightstand. If I could get it, see who else he was contacting, I might have something to take to the police. That evening, while they were out, I searched their room again. The burner phone was gone, but I found something else, a notebook, hidden under a pile of clothes. Inside, in Nathan's precise handwriting, were dates, amounts, and a name, Richard Holt. My heart stopped. Richard was David's old business partner, a man who'd vanished years ago after a falling out. Why was Nathan tracking him? I photographed the pages, my hands shaking, and sent them to Lily with a warning to stay hidden. Richard Holt. The name felt like a key. But to what? I remembered David mentioning Richard's temper, his greed, how their partnership ended in threats. Had Nathan found him? Was he part of their plan? I couldn't go to the police, yet not without proof. Not when it was my word against theirs. Instead, I called the lawyer again, asking about Richard Holt. He hesitated, then said, David mentioned him once. Said he was trouble. Why? I lied, saying I'd found an old letter. But my mind was racing. Richard, Sarah, Lily. The Willet was all connected. And Emily and Nathan were at the center, pulling strings I couldn't yet see. I needed to find Richard, to understand his role. But every step felt like walking into a trap. I tracked down Richard Holt through an old business directory, a last known address in a rundown part of town. I drove there the next morning, my heart pounding, the will tucked safely in my purse. The house was dilapidated, the yard overgrown, but a man answered the door, older, grizzled, but unmistakably Richard. He recognized me immediately, his eyes narrowing. Clara, he said, his voice rough. What do you want? I didn't waste time. I know about Sarah Mitchell. And Lily. And I know Nathan's been in touch with you. His face paled. And for a moment, I thought he'd slam the door. Instead, he let me in, his hands shaking as he poured coffee. Nathan's dangerous, he said finally. He came to me a month ago, offering a deal. Said he'd cut me in on David's money if I helped him make sure you never saw the will. My stomach twisted. Helped how? I asked. Richard looked away. He didn't say. But I know Nathan. He's not above getting his hands dirty. I left Richard's house with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Nathan was the architect of this betrayal. And Emily was following his lead. I drove home. My mind a storm of fear and determination. I couldn't let them win. Couldn't let them erase Lily. Couldn't let them destroy what was left of David's legacy. That night, I confronted Emily alone. Nathan out on some errand. I found her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. Her movements sharp. Angry. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. She froze, her eyes flicking to the knife in her hand. Then to me. About what? Mom? She asked, her tone too casual. I took a deep breath, the weight of the will in my purse grounding me. About Lily, I said, and what you and Nathan are planning. Her face went white, the knife slipping from her fingers, clattering to the floor. For a moment, I thought I'd won. Then Nathan's voice came from behind me. You shouldn't have said that, Clara. I turned, my heart in my throat, to find Nathan in the doorway, his eyes cold, a faint smile on his lips. He stepped closer, and I realized I'd miscalculated. I'd thought I could appeal to Emily, to the daughter I'd raised. But Nathan's hold on her was stronger than I'd imagined. You don't understand, Emily said, her voice trembling. You don't know what we've been through. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see the truth. But Nathan's presence silenced me. He was the danger, the one pulling the strings. And I was alone with them, the will my only weapon. I know enough, I said, backing toward the door. And I'm not letting you get away with it. Nathan laughed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. You think you can stop us? He said. You're too late, Clara. But I wasn't. Not yet. I turned and ran, the will clutched tight, knowing this was only the beginning. I stumbled out of the house, my breath ragged, the night air biting at my skin. The will was still in my purse, its weight both a shield and a burden. Nathan's laughter echoed in my mind, a taunt that fueled my resolve. I couldn't go back inside. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. I drove to a motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. In the dim light of a flickering lamp, I spread the will across the bed, reading David's letter again, searching for something I'd missed. His words were a confession. Yes, but also a map clues to a truth he'd hidden even from himself. Protect Lily, he'd written. She's innocent in this. Innocent. Unlike Emily. Unlike Nathan, who'd twisted my daughter into someone I barely recognized. I needed to find a way to expose them, to protect Lily, to reclaim what was left of my family. The next morning, I called Lily, my voice low. The motel's thin walls no match for my paranoia. Stay somewhere safe, I told her. Nathan knows I'm onto them. She was scared, her voice trembling, but she promised to lay low. I gave her the number of a private investigator I'd found online, someone discreet who could dig into Nathan's past. If he was the mastermind, there had to be a trail, something to prove his intentions, something to take to the police. I couldn't trust anyone in our small town, not with Nathan's charm and Emily's loyalty shielding him. I checked out of the motel and drove to the library again, using their computers to search for anything on Nathan. His online presence was polished, a perfect facade of a devoted husband and businessman. But I knew better now. I found an old article about a failed real estate deal. Nathan's name linked to fraud allegations that were dropped for lack of evidence. A pattern was forming, and I was determined to follow it. Back at the house, I played the part of the grieving widow, keeping my distance from Emily and Nathan. They were cautious now, their conversations guarded, but I caught glimpses of their uneasy Emily's fidgeting hands, Nathan's too long stares. I installed a small recorder in the living room, hidden behind a photo of David and me, hoping to catch something incriminating. That night, I listened as they argued, their voices low but heated. "She's getting too close," Emily said, her voice breaking. "What if she tells someone?" Nathan's reply was sharp. "Then we make sure she can't. I've done it before." My blood ran cold. Done it before. What did that mean? I copied the recording to a USB drive and mailed it to the private investigator, along with a note about Richard Holt and the burner phone. If I was going to take them down, I needed more than suspicions. The investigator called me 2 days later, his voice gruff but professional. "Nathan's got a history," he said. "Shady deals, aliases, even a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who claimed he threatened her life. He's careful, though nothing sticks." I asked about Richard Holt, and the investigator paused. "Holt's a ghost," he said. "Dropped off the grid after his fallout with your husband. But I found a connection. Nathan met with him a week before David died." My heart stopped. Before David died. The heart attack had been sudden, unexplained, but I'd never questioned it. Now, doubt crept in, poisonous and unrelenting. Had Nathan done something to David? Was that part of their plan? I thanked the investigator and hung up, my hands shaking. I needed to talk to Richard again, to press him for the truth. But I knew he'd be reluctant. He was scared of Nathan, and I was starting to understand why. I found Richard at a dive bar, his eyes bloodshot, his hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey. "Clara, you're playing with fire," he said when I sat down. I didn't care. I told him about the recording, about Nathan's threat, about my suspicions around David's death. Richard's face paled, and he leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Nathan came to me before David died," he said. "Asked me to get him something pills. Untraceable. I didn't ask questions. I needed the money." My stomach churned. Pills. For David. I pressed him for details, but he clammed up, fear overtaking his guilt. "Get out of this, Clara," he said. "Nathan's not who you think he is." I left the bar, my mind spinning. Nathan wasn't just a scammer, was dangerous, and Emily was in too deep to see it. I drove to Lily's apartment, needing to warn her, needing to see her face to remind myself why I was fighting. She let me in, her eyes red from crying. "I got a call," she said. "From Nathan. He knows I talked to you." My heart sank. I'd been careful, but not careful enough. I told her about Richard, about the pills, about my fear that Nathan had killed David. Lily's face crumpled, and she told me something that broke me. "Dad wanted to tell you about me," she said. He was going to, but Emily begged him not to. She said it would ruin her life. Emily. My daughter had known about Lily, had kept her a secret. had let Nathan manipulate her into this betrayal. I hugged Lily, promising to protect her. But inside, I was shattering. How had it come to this? How had my family become my enemy? Back home, I found the recorder missing. The photo frame slightly askew. They knew. Nathan was waiting for me in the living room. His smile gone. His eyes hard. "You've been busy, Clara," he said, holding the recorder. Emily stood behind him, her face pale, her eyes avoiding mine. "What's this about, Mom?" she asked, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't answer. My gaze locked on Nathan. "I know what you did," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. "To David. To Lily. And I'm going to prove it." Nathan's smile returned, cold and predatory. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You can't win this." But I wasn't backing down. I'd lost David. I was losing Emily. But I wouldn't lose Lily. I wouldn't lose myself. I left the house, the recorder's absence a weight in my chest. But I had the USB drive, the investigator, and a fire in my gut that wouldn't be extinguished. I met with the investigator the next day, handing over everything: the photos of Nathan's notebook, the will, my suspicions about David's death. He promised to dig deeper, to look into the pills Richard mentioned, to find a way to tie Nathan to something concrete. I checked into another motel, too afraid to stay home, too afraid of what Nathan might do. I called Lily daily, making sure she was safe, urging her to leave town until this was over. She refused, saying she wanted to help, to make things right for her mother, for David. Her courage shamed me, but it also strengthened me. I wasn't alone in this. Not entirely. I started piecing together a timeline, connecting Nathan's meetings with Richard to David's death, to the will, to Lily. Every piece was a step closer to justice, but also a step closer to danger. Emily called me that night, her voice small, broken. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I wanted to believe her, wanted to pull her into my arms and forgive her, but I couldn't. "Not yet. Tell me the truth," I said. "All of it." She hesitated, then whispered, "Nathan made me. He said we'd lose everything if you found out about Lily." My heart ached, but I pressed her. "Did he hurt Dad?" Silence stretched, heavy and damning. "I don't know," she said finally. "But I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared of him." I told her to leave, to come to me. But she hung up, and I knew she wouldn't. Nathan had her too tightly in his grip. I cried that night. For Emily. For David. For the family we'd been. But tears wouldn't save us. Only the truth would. The motel room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. The kind of place where secrets festered in the corners. I sat on the lumpy bed, the USB drive in my hand, its tiny weight a reminder of the evidence I'd gathered. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. The investigator had called earlier, his voice grim. He'd found a pharmacist who remembered Nathan buying untraceable pills, the kind that could mimic a heart attack if dosed right. It wasn't proof. Not legally. But it was a thread, and I was pulling it with everything I had. I couldn't go home. Not with Nathan's threat hanging over me. Not with Emily's loyalty wavering between her husband and her mother. I needed to find Richard again. To make him talk. To get something solid before Nathan made good on his promise to deal with me. I drove to Richard's house at dawn. The sky bruised with clouds. My nerves frayed from sleepless nights. He wasn't surprised to see me, but he wasn't welcoming either. "You're going to get us both killed," he muttered, letting me in. His living room was a mess. Bottles scattered across the table. A man drowning in his own guilt. I didn't care about his comfort. I needed answers. "Tell me about the pills," I said, my voice sharp. "Did Nathan use them on David?" Richard's eyes darted away, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. "I don't know," he said, but his voice cracked. "Betraying him." I leaned closer, refusing to let him hide. "You're scared of him," I said. "So am I. But if we don't stop him, he'll hurt Lily. He'll hurt me. And you'll be next." That broke him. He slumped, his cigarette trembling between his fingers. He didn't say it was for David. He whispered. But he paid me to keep quiet. Said it was for a deal. Not murder. Murder. The word hung between us, heavy and final. I pressed Richard for more dates. Amounts. Anything that could tie Nathan to David's death. He gave me a name. A supplier in the city who'd provided the pills. And a warning, Nathan's got eyes everywhere. Be careful. I left with a scrap of paper and a fire in my chest, knowing I was closer to the truth, but further from safety. I called the investigator, passing on the supplier's name, begging him to move fast. "This isn't just about the will anymore," I said. "It's about my husband's life." He promised to follow the lead, but his voice held a caution I couldn't ignore. Nathan was slippery, and I was running out of time. I checked my phone, hoping for a message from Emily, hoping she'd choose me over him. Nothing. My daughter was slipping away, and I couldn't save her if she didn't want to be saved. I spent the day at the library, piecing together what I knew. Nathan's fraud allegations, his meetings with Richard, the pills, the burner phone. Lily's existence site was a puzzle, and I was missing the final piece. I searched for the supplier online, finding only a vague reference to an underground network, the kind of thing David would have steered clear of. Had Nathan always been this dark? Or had greed turned him into something else? I thought of Emily, her laugh as a child, her trust in me, now twisted by Nathan's influence. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was my daughter, and somewhere beneath the lies, she was still there. I wrote her a letter, not to send, but to ground myself, pouring out my love, my pain, my plea for her to come back to me. It felt futile, but it kept me sane. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. My heart leapt, thinking it was Emily, but it was Lily. Her voice panicked. "Someone followed me," she said. "I saw a car outside my apartment, just sitting there." I told her to leave, to go to a friend's, anywhere but home. My fear for her was a living thing, clawing at my chest. Nathan was closing in, and I was the reason. I called the investigator again, urging him to check on Lily, to make sure she was safe. He agreed, but I could hear the strain in his voice. This was bigger than he'd expected, bigger than me. I didn't sleep that night, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios: Nathan finding Lily, Nathan coming for me, Emily standing by him as he did. I clutched the will, its pages worn from my constant handling, and prayed for a way out. The next morning, the investigator called with news. The supplier had talked, confirming Nathan had bought the pills weeks before David's death. It's not enough for an arrest, he said, but it's enough to get the police interested. I felt a spark of hope. Fragile but real. I told him about Lily's stalker, and he promised to put a tail on Nathan, to catch him in the act. I wanted to believe it would be enough. But Nathan was too careful, too cunning. I needed to draw him out, to force his hand. I decided to set a trap, to use the will as bait. I called Emily, leaving a voicemail I knew she'd share with Nathan. I'm meeting the lawyer tomorrow, I said. I'm changing the will. Lily gets nothing. It was a lie, but it would get their attention. If Nathan thought his plan was unraveling, he'd act, and I'd be ready. I met the investigator at a diner, going over the plan. He'd have a contact in the police on standby, ready to move if Nathan showed up. I'd bring the will. Let Nathan see it. Let him think he could take it. The diner was crowded, the noise a shield against my fear. I handed the investigator copies of everything: Nathan's notebook, the will, Richard's confession. If something happens to me, I said, make sure Lily's safe. He nodded, his eyes serious, and I felt a strange calm. I was risking everything, but I was doing it for David, for Lily, for the family I'd thought we were. I left the diner, the will in my purse, and drove to the lawyer's office, knowing Nathan would follow. He did. I saw his car in the rearview mirror, tailing me at a distance, his presence a shadow I couldn't shake. The lawyer's office was quiet, the receptionist gone for the day. I sat in the waiting room, the will on my lap, my heart pounding. Nathan walked in, alone, his smile gone, his eyes hard. Clara, he said, his voice low. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I stood, clutching the will, my voice steady despite the fear. I know what you did to David, I said, and I'm not letting you hurt Lily. His face darkened, and he stepped closer, his hand in his pocket. I braced myself, ready for whatever came next. But then I heard Ida's siren, faint but growing louder. The investigator had done his job. Nathan froze, his eyes darting to the window, and I saw my chance. I bolted for the door, the will in my hand, and ran toward the sound of salvation. The police arrived, their lights flashing, their voices sharp as they ordered Nathan to stand down. He didn't fight, didn't run, just stood there, his eyes locked on me, a promise of retribution in their depths. They cuffed him, reading him his rights, and I watched, my legs trembling, the will still clutched tight. Emily wasn't there, and I didn't know if that was a relief or a fresh wound. I gave the police the USB drive, the photos, everything I had, and they promised to investigate David's death, to protect Lily. I drove to the motel, exhausted but alive, and called Lily, telling her it was over for now. She cried, thanking me, and I felt a flicker of redemption, a sense that I'd done something right in a world gone wrong. But Emily was still out there, still caught in Nathan's web, and I couldn't rest until I had her back. I wrote her another letter, leaving it at the house with a note begging her to meet me, to talk, to let me help her. I didn't know if she'd come, but I had to try. I'd lost David. I'd uncovered his secrets, but I wouldn't lose my daughter. Not without a fight. The will. Lily. Nathan's betrayal, it was all part of a truth I was still unraveling. A truth that would either destroy us or set us free. I sat in the motel, the night pressing against the windows, and waited for Emily. For justice. For a chance to make things right. The motel's neon sign buzzed outside my window, casting a sickly glow across the room. I hadn't slept properly in days. My dreams haunted by Nathan's cold eyes and Emily's trembling voice. The police had him in custody. But it wasn't over. Not until I understood why Emily had chosen him over me. Not until I could pull her back from the edge. The will sat on the nightstand, its pages worn from my constant handling. A reminder of David's secrets and the price we were all paying for them. I called the investigator, checking on Nathan's status. He's not talking, he said, his voice tired. But we've got enough to hold him suspicion of fraud, tampering with evidence. The pills are a lead. But we need more for murder. Murder. The word still felt unreal. A betrayal too vast to grasp. David's heart attack, so sudden, so final, now seemed like a calculated act. And my daughter was complicit, whether she knew it or not. I drove to Lily's apartment, needing to see her, to remind myself why I was fighting. She opened the door, her face pale but determined, and we sat on her worn couch, surrounded by photos of her mother. Sarah, I never wanted this, she said, her voice soft. I didn't ask for Dad's money. I believed her. Lily wasn't the enemy, she was a piece of David. A piece I hadn't known existed until it was too late. I told her about Nathan's arrest, about the pills, about my fear that Emily was lost to me. Lily listened, her eyes so much like David's, and offered to help. If Emily knows about me, she said, maybe I can talk to her. Make her see. I shook my head. Emily was too far gone, too wrapped in Nathan's lies. But Lily's offer planted a seed. Maybe, just maybe, I could reach her through Lily, through the sister she'd rejected. I returned to the motel and wrote another letter to Emily, pouring out my heart, begging her to meet me at a neutral Placia park, a cafe, anywhere she felt safe. I left it at the house, tucked under her pillow, hoping she'd find it before Nathan's influence tightened its grip. The investigator called again, saying they'd found the supplier, who'd confirmed Nathan's purchase but claimed ignorance about its purpose. He's covering his tracks, the investigator said. But we're getting closer. Closer wasn't enough. I needed proof. Something undeniable to tie Nathan to David's death. To free Emily from his hold. I remembered Richard's fear. His warning about Nathan's eyes everywhere. I checked my car, my purse, my phone, paranoid that he'd planted something to track me. I found nothing, but the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The next day, I met the investigator at a coffee shop, its hum of conversation a shield against prying ears. He showed me a photo of Nathan meeting the supplier, time-stamped a week before David's death. It wasn't enough for a conviction, but it was enough to keep digging. What about Richard? I asked. Can he testify? The investigator shook his head. He's gone dark. Left town. Probably scared. Nathan's got a way of making people disappear. My stomach twisted. Disappear. Like David. Like Lily might have, if I hadn't found her. I handed over the will again, pointing out David's letter, his plea to protect Lily. This is why Nathan's doing this, I said. He wants her out of the picture. And me too. The investigator nodded, promising to push harder, to get the police to re-examine David's autopsy. I left the coffee shop, my heart heavy but resolute. I wasn't just fighting for justice, I was fighting for my family. That night, Emily called. Her voice was small, fragile, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms. "Mom, I got your letter," she said. "Can we talk?" My heart leapt, but caution held me back. "Where's Nathan?" I asked. She hesitated. "He's not here. He's with the police." I didn't trust it. Didn't trust her. But I couldn't let her go. We agreed to meet at a park the next morning. A public place where I could see her coming. Where Nathan couldn't hide. I barely slept. My mind racing with hope and dread. Was this Emily reaching out? Or was it Nathan's trap? I packed the will, the USB drive, everything I had, and hid copies in a safe deposit box. Just in case. If Nathan came for me, I wouldn't go down without a fight. The park was quiet when I arrived. The morning mist clinging to the grass. Emily was there. Alone. Sitting on a bench. Her hands clasped tight. I approached slowly, scanning for Nathan. For any sign of danger. She looked up. Her eyes red. Her face drawn. "Mom," she said, and the word broke me. I sat beside her, keeping distance. The will in my purse a silent barrier between us. "Why, Emily?" I asked. "Why did you do this?" She cried then, her shoulders shaking, and told me everything: how Nathan had convinced her Lily was a threat. How he'd promised they'd lose everything if I found out. How he'd manipulated her fear of losing her father's legacy. "I didn't know about the pills," she sobbed. "I swear, Mom, I didn't know." I wanted to believe her. But trust was a fragile thing, shattered by her choices. I took her hand, my own trembling, and told her about Lily. About David's letter. About the truth she'd helped Nathan bury. Her face crumpled, guilt and shame warring with defiance. "I was protecting us," she said. "He said it was for us." I shook my head, my voice firm. "He used you, Emily. He used you to hurt Dad. To hurt me. To hurt Lily." She pulled away, her eyes wild. But I saw the crack in her armor. The flicker of the daughter I loved. I gave her the letter I'd written, begging her to choose me. To choose truth. "Come with me," I said. "We can fix this together." She didn't answer. Just stood and walked away, leaving me alone on the bench. The mist closing in. I drove to the police station, my heart heavy but determined. I gave them everything: the supplier's statement, the photo, Richard's confession, Emily's words. They promised to investigate, to protect Lily, to keep Nathan locked up until they had answers. I didn't feel safe. Not yet. But I felt stronger. I'd faced Emily. I'd faced Nathan. And I was still standing. I called Lily, telling her about the meeting, about Emily's tears. "She's not lost," Lily said, her voice hopeful. "She just needs time." I wanted to believe her. But time was a luxury I wasn't sure we had. Nathan's reach was long, his influence deep, and I knew he wouldn't stay silent forever. I moved to a new motel, changing my number, my routines, anything to stay ahead of Nathan's shadow. The investigator kept me updated, his calls a lifeline in the chaos. They'd found traces of the pills in David's autopsy, enough to open a case, enough to make Nathan a suspect. It wasn't justice. Not yet. But it was a step. I wrote to Emily again, sending the letter through the investigator, hoping she'd read it. hoping she'd see the truth. I thought of David, of his secrets, of the love we'd shared despite them. I thought of Lily, of her courage, of the sister Emily didn't know she needed. And I thought of myself, a widow fighting for redemption, for a family that might never be whole again. The new motel was colder, its walls paper-thin, the hum of the highway a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen from the life I'd known. I kept the will close, its pages a map of David's betrayal and my own resolve. Emily's face in the park haunted Meher tears, her hesitation, the flicker of the daughter I'd raised. I wanted to believe she could be saved, but Nathan's shadow loomed large, even from a jail cell. The investigator called with updates. Nathan was still in custody, but he'd hired a lawyer, a slick one who was already poking holes in the case. The pills, the supplier, Richard's testimony, it was all circumstantial, not enough for a murder charge. Yet, I clung to that word. Yet, like a lifeline. I needed more. Something undeniable to tie Nathan to David's death, to free Emily from his grip. I spent my days digging, calling old friends of David's, anyone who might know about Nathan's past. Most were reluctant, their voices tight with fear or ignorance. But one name kept surfacing, Margaret, David's former assistant, who'd left years ago after a falling out with Nathan. I tracked her down to a small town 2 hours away, living quietly, her life a deliberate retreat from the chaos she'd escaped. I drove to her house, my heart pounding, the will tucked in my purse like a talisman. Margaret was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes were sharp, wary. "Clara," she said, letting me in. "I knew you'd come eventually." She didn't waste time, pouring tea as she told me about Nathan's ambition, his ruthlessness, how he'd pushed her out when she questioned his deals. He was always watching David, she said, waiting for a weakness. I asked about the pills, about David's death, and Margaret's face darkened. "I don't have proof," she said, but Nathan was obsessed with control. If David was in his way, he'd find a way to remove him. Her words chilled me, but they weren't enough. I needed evidence, something tangible. Margaret hesitated, then pulled a box from a closet, filled with old documents from David's business. "I kept these," she said, "in case I ever needed leverage." Inside, I found a contract, and signed, between Nathan and a company linked to the supplier. It was dated a month before David's death, a deal that never went through but hinted at Nathan's connections to the underground. I photographed every page, my hands shaking, and thanked Margaret, promising to keep her name out of it. She nodded, her eyes sad. "Be careful, Clara. He's not done with you." I sent the photos to the investigator, my heart racing with hope. This was a link I needed, the thread that could unravel Nathan's lies. The investigator was cautious but optimistic, saying he'd pass it to the police, see if they could trace the contract to the supplier. I drove back to the motel, checking my mirrors, paranoia my constant companion. Emily hadn't called, hadn't responded to my letters, and I feared she was slipping further away. I wrote her again, leaving the letter with a neighbor I trusted, begging her to meet me, to see the truth about Nathan. I didn't know if she'd read it, but I had to keep trying. She was my daughter, and I'd fight for her until I had nothing left. That night, I dreamed of David, his face soft, his voice pleading. "Protect them both," he said, and I woke with tears on my cheeks. knowing he meant Emily and Lily. I called Lily, checking on her, relieved to hear she was safe, staying with a friend. She asked about Emily, her voice hesitant, and I told her about the park, about Emily's tears. She's not gone, Lily said, echoing her earlier hope. She just needs you to keep fighting. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and promised to keep her safe, to make this right. But the weight of it all, David's secrets, Nathan's crimes, Emily's betrayal was crushing me, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could carry it. The investigator called the next morning, his voice urgent. The police traced the contract. He said, it's linked to the supplier, and they're pulling Nathan in for questioning again. But Clara, he's out on bail. My heart stopped. Out on bail. Nathan was free, and I was a target. I packed my things, moving to another motel. My fear sharper now, a blade against my throat. I called Lily, warning her to stay hidden, to trust no one. I checked my phone, hoping for Emily, but found nothing. The silence was worse than Nathan's threats, a reminder of how alone I was. I hid the will in a new safe deposit box, keeping only copies, knowing Nathan would come for it if he could. I needed to stay one step ahead, to protect Lily, to save Emily, to honor David's memory. I met the investigator at a new location, a crowded mall where we could blend in. He showed me a report from the polysaya toxicology analysis from David's autopsy, showing traces of a rare compound, one that could have been in the pills Nathan bought. It wasn't definitive, but it was close, closer than we'd been. We need Richard, the investigator said. If he testifies, we've got a case. But Richard was gone, a ghost scared into hiding by Nathan's reach. I remembered his fear, his trembling hands, and knew I'd have to find him, to convince him to talk. I drove to the dive bar where I'd last seen him, but it was empty, the bartender shrugging when I asked. He split, he said. Didn't say where. I left, my hope fading, but I wouldn't give up. Richard was out there, and he was my key to Nathan's downfall. I spent the next day searching for Richard, calling old contacts, checking motels, bars, anywhere he might hide. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the pier. Midnight. Come alone. My heart raced. Emily. Richard. Or Nathan, luring me into a trap. I called the investigator, telling him about the text, and he promised to have a cop nearby, watching from a distance. I drove to the pier, the will's copy in my purse, my nerves electric. The night was cold, the waves crashing against the pilings, a rhythm that matched my pulse. I saw a figure at the end of the pier, small, hesitant. Emily. My heart leapt, but I approached slowly, scanning for Nathan. She was alone, her face pale in the moonlight, her eyes red. Mom, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I wanted to hold her, to forgive her, but I needed the truth. Tell me, I said, my voice firm. She cried, her words spilling out how Nathan had manipulated her, fed her lies about Lily, about the will, about David's death. He said it was a heart attack. She sobbed. But I found the pills. Mom. In his bag. After you left. My blood ran cold. Proof. Emily had proof. I took her hands, pulling her close, promising to protect her. But then I saw Ida's shadow moving behind her. Too fast. Too deliberate. Nathan. I pushed Emily behind me. My voice a shout. Stay back. He stepped into the light. His smile gone. His eyes deadly. You should have let it go, Clara, he said. But I hadn't. And I wouldn't. The cop's siren wailed in the distance. And Nathan froze. His plan unraveling. I held Emily tight. The will between us. And knew this was the moment everything changed. The pier stretched into the darkness. The ocean's roar a backdrop to the standoff. Nathan stood 10 feet away. His silhouette sharp against the moonlight. His eyes locked on me with a predator's focus. Emily clung to my arm. Her breath ragged. Her body trembling. The siren grew louder. Closer. But not close enough. I gripped the copy of the will in my purse. Its weight my only anchor. You can't win this, Nathan, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The police know everything. His laugh was cold, cutting through the wind. You think a few papers and a scared girl will stop me? He said, stepping closer. Emily whimpered, and I tightened my grip on her, shielding her from the man she'd married. The man who'd poisoned our family. The siren was almost here. But Nathan's hand was in his pocket. And I knew we were out of time. I pushed Emily toward the pier's edge. Away from him. My heart pounding. Run, I whispered. But she froze. Her eyes wide with fear. Nathan's smile twisted. And he pulled something from his pocket, a knife. Small but glinting. Its threat clear. You're making this personal, Clara, he said, his voice low, almost intimate. I stepped back, my mind racing for a way out, for a way to keep Emily safe. The will, the pills, the contract, they were all in the hands of the police now. But Nathan didn't know that. I needed to stall, to keep him talking until help arrived. Why David? I asked, my voice sharp. Why kill him? Nathan's eyes flickered. A crack in his facade. He was in the way, he said. Too noble. Too stubborn. And you just like him. The admission hit me like a blow. Confirmation of what I'd feared. David's death wasn't chance. It was Nathan's doing. A calculated move to secure the money. To erase Lily. To control Emily. I wanted to scream. To lunge at him. But the knife kept me rooted. Emily's voice broke the silence. Small and trembling. You lied to me, she said to Nathan. Her words a betrayal of her own. His face hardened. And he turned to her. The knife still in hand. You were supposed to trust me, he said. You were supposed to choose me. Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. And I saw my daughter. My real daughter. Breaking free. I choose Mom, she said. And my heart swelled. Even as Nathan's rage flared. The siren was deafening now. Lights flashing at the pier's entrance. Nathan's eyes darted toward the sound. His composure cracking. I seized the moment. Grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her toward the light. Toward safety. Nathan lunged. The knife slicing through the air. But I was faster. My fear a fuel I hadn't known I possessed. We reached the end of the pier just as the police swarmed. Their shouts drowning out the waves. Nathan dropped the knife. His hands raised. His face a mask of defeat. They cuffed him. His eyes never leaving mine. A promise of vengeance even in chains. Emily collapsed against me, sobbing, and I held her. The will forgotten. The fight over for now. The police took my statement, their questions a blur, and I gave them the copy of the will, the photos, everything I had. They promised to protect Lily, to build the case against Nathan, to give David justice. We drove to the station, Emily silent beside me, her hands twisting in her lap. I wanted to ask her everything, how long she'd known, how deep Nathan's hold had been, but I couldn't. Not yet. She was here. She was safe. And that was enough. At the station, I called Lily, telling her Nathan was in custody, that Emily was with me. Bring her to me, Lily said, her voice soft but firm. She needs to know who I am. I hesitated, unsure if Emily was ready. But I agreed. The truth had torn us apart. Maybe it could bring us back together. We met Lily at her apartment, the air thick with tension, with hope. Emily stood rigid, her eyes avoiding Lily's. But Lily stepped forward, her voice gentle. I'm not here to take anything from you, she said. I just want to know you. Emily broke then, her sobs raw, her guilt spilling out. I hated you, she said to Lily. I thought you'd ruin everything. Lily didn't flinch, just took Emily's hand, her eyes so much like David's, full of forgiveness I wasn't sure I could muster. I watched them, my daughter and my husband's daughter, and felt the weight of David's secrets lift. Just a little. We talked for hours, piecing together the truth, David's affair, his love for both girls, his fear of hurting me. Emily admitted she'd known about Lily for years, that Nathan had used that knowledge to twist her loyalty, to make her believe Lily was a threat. I was wrong, she said, her voice small. I'm so sorry, Mom. I held her, my tears mixing with hers, and promised we'd fix this together. The police called the next day, confirming Nathan's charges: fraud, conspiracy, and now suspicion of murder, thanks to the toxicology report and the supplier's testimony. Richard was still missing, but they were searching, confident he'd turn up. I felt a flicker of relief, but it was tempered by the road ahead. Emily was fragile, her trust in herself shattered, and I knew it would take time to rebuild what we'd lost. Lily was stronger, her resilience a mirror of David's, and I leaned on her, grateful for her presence. We moved into a new apartment, the three of us, a tentative family born from betrayal. The will was with the lawyer now, its terms unchanged. Lily would get her share, and Emily accepted it, her greed replaced by guilt, by a desire to make things right. I visited David's grave. The first time since his death I'd felt ready. I didn't bring flowers, just the letter he'd written, its words worn from my reading. I forgive you, I whispered, though I wasn't sure it was true. I forgave him for Lily, for the love he'd given her. But the secrets, the lies, they still stung. I left the letter there, a piece of him I could let go. Back at the apartment, Emily and Lily were cooking, their laughter a fragile bridge over the pain. I joined them, my heart heavy but hopeful, knowing we were starting over, knowing it wouldn't be easy. Nathan's trial was months away, a shadow still looming. But we were together, and that was enough. I wrote to the investigator, thanking him, asking him to keep looking for Richard, to tie up the loose ends. He promised he would, his voice warmer now, a partner in this fight. I kept the USB drive, the photos, the contract. a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. Emily started therapy. Her sessions a step toward healing, toward understanding why she'd let Nathan control her. Lily enrolled in classes, her future bright despite the past. And two kept moving, kept fighting, kept loving them both. David's will had torn us apart, but it was also bringing us back together. A legacy of pain and redemption I hadn't expected. The house was empty now, its walls silent, its secrets laid bare. We were building something new, something stronger, and I wouldn't let it break. The new apartment smelled of fresh paint and second chances, a stark contrast to the house I'd fled, its walls heavy with betrayal. Emily, Lily, and I were learning to navigate this strange new family. Our conversations tentative, our trust fragile but growing. Emily was quieter now, her laughter rare. But when it came, it was real, a glimpse of the girl I'd raised. Lily was a steady presence, her kindness a balm to the wounds we all carried. The will sat in a safe deposit box. Its power diminished, but its weight still felt. Nathan's trial was set for spring, and the police were building their case. The pills and the contract enough to keep him locked up. But I knew he wasn't done. His eyes on the pier, that cold promise of retribution, haunted me, a reminder that this wasn't over. I met with the investigator weekly, his updates a mix of progress and frustration. They'd found Richard, holed up in a motel across state lines, too scared to testify but willing to talk. He confirmed the pills, the investigator said, his voice grim. Said Nathan bragged about taking care of David after it happened. My stomach churned. The truth, both a victory and a wound. David's death, once a tragedy, was now a crime. And I was the one unearthing it, piece by painful piece. The investigator warned me to stay vigilant. Nathan's lawyer was digging into my life, looking for leverage, for anything to discredit me. I changed my routines again, avoiding patterns, checking my surroundings, living like a fugitive in my own story. But I wasn't running anymore. I was fighting. Emily started opening up, her therapy sessions peeling back layers of guilt and manipulation. Nathan made me feel like I had no choice, she said one night, her voice small as we sat at the kitchen table. Lily was there, listening, her presence a quiet strength. He said if I didn't help him, we'd lose everything: Dad's money, the house, you. Her eyes met mine, pleading for forgiveness. I took her hand, my own trembling, and told her I loved her, that we'd get through this. But the truth was, I was too angry at her choices, at Nathan's hold, at David for leaving me to clean up his mess. Lily spoke then, her voice soft but firm. We're family now, she said. All of us. We don't have to let him win. Emily nodded, tears falling, and I saw a spark of hope, a chance to rebuild. The police called with news the supplier had turned, offering a full confession in exchange for leniency. He'd sold Nathan the pills, knowing their purpose, and had kept records, dates, payments, even a text from Nathan confirming the plan. It was the break we needed, the evidence to turn suspicion into a charge. I felt a rush of relief, but it was tempered by fear. Nathan's lawyer would fight dirty, and I was the key witness, the one who'd uncovered his lies. I met with the prosecutor, a sharp woman with kind eyes, who walked me through the process. You're strong, Clara, she said. He can't touch you now. But I didn't feel strong. I felt exposed, A widow standing alone against a man who'd taken everything from me. Still, I nodded, promising to testify, to see this through. Lily and Emily were bonding. Their shared pain a bridge I hadn't expected. They talked about David, about the father they'd both loved, the man who'd failed them in different ways. I listened, sometimes joining in, sometimes retreating to let them heal together. I visited David's grave again, this time with flowers, my anger softening into something else, grief. Yes, but also acceptance. He'd made mistakes, but he'd loved us all, in his flawed, human way. I didn't read his letter again. I didn't need to. Its words were part of me now, a reminder to protect Lily, to save Emily, to forgive myself. The apartment became a home, its walls filled with new memories, Lily's sketches on the fridge, Emily's music playing softly, my own tentative laughter. The investigator found Maury a bank account in Nathan's name, opened weeks before David's death, with deposits tied to the supplier. It was another piece of the puzzle, another nail in Nathan's coffin. I felt the case tightening, the truth closing in. But I also felt Nathan's shadow, his reach even from behind bars. I installed cameras in the apartment, checked the locks, kept my phone charged and close. Emily noticed. Her eyes worried, but I brushed it off, not wanting to scare her. She was healing, slowly, and I wouldn't let Nathan take that from her. Lily, too, was cautious. Her friend's place a safe haven, but she came to the apartment often, her presence a reminder of what we were building. One night, Emily found a letter in her old purse, one Nathan had written but never sent. It was a confession, of sorts. To Harrow promised that they'd have everything once I was out of the way. She showed it to me, her hand shaking, her face pale. I didn't know he meant this, she said. I thought he just wanted the money. I held her, my own fear rising, and called the investigator, who passed the letter to the police. It wasn't enough on its own, but it was another piece, another reason to keep fighting. I looked at Emily, at the guilt in her eyes, and told her it wasn't her fault. You were manipulated, I said. But you're here now. That's what matters. She nodded, clinging to me, and I felt a flicker of the mother I'd been, the one who could fix anything. The trial was approaching, and I prepared myself, meeting with the prosecutor, rehearsing my testimony. I'd tell the truth about the will, the pills, Nathan's threats, Emily's betrayal, Lily's courage. I'd face him in court, his eyes on me, and I wouldn't flinch. The apartment was quiet that night. Emily and Lily asleep, their breathing a soft rhythm in the dark. I sat up, the will's copy in my hands, its words a reminder of why I'd started this fight. David's secrets had torn us apart, but they'd also brought us here, to this fragile new beginning. I thought of Nathan, of the man who tried to destroy us, and knew he wouldn't win. Not this time. Not ever. I wrote to Emily and Lily, a letter for each, to read if I didn't make it through the trial. To Emily, I wrote of my love, my pride in her strength, my hope for her future. To Lily, I wrote of my gratitude, my promise to be the family she'd never had. I sealed them, hid them, and prayed they'd never need to be opened. The investigator called, saying Richard had agreed to testify, his fear overcome by guilt, by a need to make things right. It was the final piece, the testimony that could seal Nathan's fate. I felt a surge of hope, tempered by the knowledge that Nathan would fight, that his lawyer would twist everything. But I was ready. I'd lost too much to lose this now. The courtroom was cold, its fluorescent lights harsh against the polished wood. I sat in the witness stand, my hands clasped tight, the will's copy in a folder beside me. Nathan sat across the room, his suit impeccable, his eyes locked on me. A silent challenge. Emily was in the gallery, her face pale, her hands twisting in her lap. Lily was there too, her presence a quiet strength, her eyes meeting mine with encouragement. The prosecutor led me through my story: the will, David's death, Nathan's threats, the pills, the contract, Richard's confession. I spoke clearly, my voice steady despite the weight of Nathan's stare. His lawyer was sharp, his questions designed to trip me, to paint me as a grieving widow lost in paranoia. "Isn't it true you were estranged from your daughter?" he asked, his tone slick. I didn't flinch. "We had distance," I said, "but I never stopped loving her." The trial stretched over days, each one a battle. Richard testified, his voice shaking, his eyes avoiding Nathan's. He spoke of the pills, of Nathan's boasts, of the fear that had driven him into hiding. The supplier's confession followed, his records damning, the text from Nathan a clear link to David's death. Emily took the stand, her voice small but resolute, telling the court how Nathan had manipulated her, how she'd found the pills, how she'd chosen me in the end. I watched her, my heart aching with pride and pain, knowing how hard it was for her to face him. Nathan's lawyer tried to break her, but she held firm, her tears a testament to her truth. Lily didn't testify; she didn't need to. Her existence was enough. The reason Nathan had started this, the secret he'd killed to keep. The evidence mounted: the toxicology report, the contract, the letter Nathan wrote to Emily. The jury listened, their faces unreadable, but I felt the tide turning. Nathan's composure cracked, his eyes darting, his hands restless. His lawyer called witnesses, old colleagues who painted him as a devoted husband, a grieving son-in-law, but their words rang hollow against the truth. The prosecutor closed with a photo of David, smiling, alive, a reminder of what Nathan had taken. I cried then, the first time in court, and Emily reached for my hand, her touch a lifeline. The jury deliberated for 2 days, the wait agonizing, each hour a test of my strength. I stayed with Emily and Lily, our apartment a sanctuary, our conversations a bridge over the pain. The verdict came on a gray morning, the courtroom packed, the air thick with tension. Guilty. On all counts: fraud, conspiracy, murder. Nathan's face was stone, but his eyes burned, a final promise I refused to fear. The judge sentenced him to life, no parole, and I felt the weight lift. Not completely, but enough to breathe. Emily sobbed beside me, relief and guilt intertwined, and Lily hugged us both, her strength holding us together. We left the courtroom, the world brighter, the future uncertain but ours. The will was finalized, Lily's share secure, Emily's guilt eased by her choice to stand with me. We drove home, the three of us, a family forged in fire, stronger for it. I visited David's grave one last time, the will in my hands, its pages worn but whole. "You left me a mess," I said, my voice soft, "but I fixed it. For them." I didn't forgive him. Not entirely. But I understood him. The man who'd loved too many. Too imperfectly. I left a flower. A single white rose. And walked away. Ready to let him go. Back at the apartment. Emily and Lily were planning a dinner. Their laughter filling the space. A sound I hadn't dared hope for. I joined them. Chopping vegetables. Sharing stories. Building something new. Nathan was gone. His shadow fading. And we were here. Together. Healing. The investigator called. Tying up loose ends. Richard was in protective custody. His testimony key to the conviction. The supplier faced his own charges. The network unraveling. I thanked the investigator. My voice warm. Grateful for his partnership. I kept the USB drive. The photos. The contract. A reminder of the fight. Of the strength I'd found. Emily was healing. Her therapy a steady path. Her bond with Lily growing. Lily was thriving. Her classes a step toward a future she'd chosen. And I was finding myself. A widow no longer defined by loss, but by what I'd fought for. What I'd won. The house was sold. Its memories too heavy. And we stayed in the apartment. Our new home. Our new start. I wrote one final letter. To myself this time. A promise to keep going. To love fiercely. To forgive slowly. I tucked it away. With David's letter. With the will. A story of pain and redemption I'd carry always. The trial had ended. But the healing was just beginning. A journey we'd take together. Emily smiled at me across the table. Her eyes clear. Her heart open. Lily laughed. Her voice a mirror of David's. A reminder of what we'd gained. I looked at them. My daughters. And knew I'd done right. By them. By David. By myself. The will had been a spark. But we were the fire. Burning bright. Unbreakable. The apartment was alive with the scent of roasted garlic and the hum of conversation. A fragile harmony I'd fought to build. Emily and Lily moved around the kitchen. Their laughter a melody over the clatter of dishes. A sound that felt like home. The will was locked away. Its secrets no longer a threat, but a reminder of the truth we'd uncovered. Nathan's conviction was final. His life sentence a weight lifted. Though his shadow lingered in the quiet moments. A caution to never let my guard down fully. I watched my daughters Emily. My heart. And Lily. My unexpected gift and felt a peace I hadn't known since David's death. We were a family. Not the one I'd planned. But one forged in truth. In pain. In love. Emily was different now. Her edges softened. Her guilt tempered by time and therapy. She talked about David openly, sharing memories that made us laugh and cry, bridging the gap between her and Lily. Lily embraced her role as sister, her resilience a light in our darkest moments. They planned a trip together, a weekend away, a chance to build something beyond the shadow of the trial. I didn't join them. Not yet. I needed time. Time to heal. Time to rediscover Clara. The woman who'd survived betrayal and fought for justice. I started writing. Not letters, but a journal. Pouring out the story of the will. Of Nathan. Of the family we'd become. It was therapy. A way to make sense of the chaos. To find redemption in the words. The investigator stopped by one afternoon. His face lined with fatigue, but warm with pride. You did good, Clara, he said, handing me a coffee. He'd closed the case, tying up the last threads Richard's testimony, the supplier's confession, the